Hello friends, welcome to the OpenShift training program brought to you by the Skillpedia. My name is Ram. So this is session 11, Install OpenShift Container Platform. Learning objective is install OpenShift and configure the cluster on AWS Cloud. OpenShift Container Platform Installation Overview. Remember, this session is theoretical discussion of installation prompts and installation options, plus a demonstration of configuring and installing OpenShift on AWS Cloud. Two basic types of OpenShift Container Platform clusters are: one is installer provisioned infrastructure clusters, and second is user provisioned infrastructure clusters. In this demonstration, in this session, we'll talk about installer provisioned. Both type of clusters have the following characteristics: highly available infrastructure with no single point of failure is available by default. And then administrator maintains control over what updates are applied and when they are applied. You use the same installation program to deploy both type of clusters. Interestingly, I noticed that installer program are using Terraform for the installation, because the way they install and the way kind of files they create, I gone through that installation in detail, and they're using Terraform. So subset of the installation targets and the dependencies. We create one install config file. This is a install config platform. This will call install config base domain, install config SSH public key, install config cluster name, install config pull script. All these parameters are provided to the install config, and then it will start the installation. This is the targets and the dependencies. Available platform for installer provisioned. In OpenShift Container Platform 4.6, which is a part of this topic, this discussion, you can install a cluster that uses installer provision infrastructure on AWS, which is in our discussion this session, Google Cloud Platform GCP, Microsoft Azure, Red Hat OpenStack Platform version 13 and 16. Latest OpenShift Container Platform release support both the latest, that is Red Hat OpenShift Platform RHOSP long life release and intermediate releases, and then Red Hat virtualization, that is RHV, and VMware vSphere. All these platforms are supported. We have to talk about one because it is not possible to demonstrate all of them. However, once you learn one, you can do on any. Available platforms, user provisioned. In OpenShift Container Platform 4.6, you can install a cluster that uses user provision infrastructure on AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, RHOSP, that is OpenStack, RHV, virtualization, VMsphere, and the bare metal. Additional thing is bare metal, physical machines. The installation process. When you install an OpenShift Container Platform cluster, you download the installation program from the appropriate infrastructure provider. That is, we have to visit cloud.redhat.com/OpenShift install or the other platform page on the Red Hat OpenShift cluster manager site. This site manages REST API for accounts, registry tokens, which are pull secrets that you use to obtain the required components, and cluster registration, which associates the cluster identity to a Red Hat account to facilitate the gathering of usage metrics. So the installation process is you download one program called installer. This installer program will create one node that will be temporary in nature. Once the installation is complete, that will be destroyed automatically. We call it as bootstrap node, and this is created on the data center, on premises or cloud. If you are using bare metal, it is on premises. If you are using cloud, obviously it works on cloud. This bootstrap node will create master node. We call it as control plane. master node 2, that is another control plane, and master node 3. Three master nodes will be created. Then Red Hat OpenShift platform, RHCOS, these nodes will be created. Then we have worker nodes. So these nodes will create, after that worker nodes will be created. What I have seen, 3 master node, 2 master node, 3 worker node, and or 2 worker node, 3 master nodes. So redundancy purpose, minimum 2 master nodes are mandatory, 3 worker nodes are there. So that customization is also supported, which I will do. I will demonstrate that during the installation. Installing a cluster on AWS prerequisites. Configure an AWS account first on the host cluster. If you have AWS profile stored on your computer, it must not be you must not use a temporary session token that you generate while using a multi-factor authentication device. The cluster continues to use your current AWS credentials to create AWS resources for the entire life cycle of the cluster, so you must use long-lived credentials. If you use a firewall, you must configure it to allow the website. Refer to this documentation docs.openshift.com/container platform 4.6 installation install configuring firewall. The link is given that your cluster require access to. If you do not allow the system to manage identity and access management system, that is IAM, then cluster administrator can manually create and maintain IAM credentials. Refer to the link for this particular thing. I have included the link. I'm pausing at that link so that you can refer to the link given for the specific additional notes on these topics. Then internet and telemetry access. You require access to the internet to install your cluster. You must have internet access to access the Red Hat OpenShift Cluster Manager. This page, which is cloud.redhat.com/OpenShift, to the page to download the installation program and perform subsequent subscription management. Then this internet access also require access to, that is quay.io, to obtain the packages that are required to install your cluster. Obtain the packages that are required to perform the cluster updates. So this internet access is mandatory for these 3 points. SSH private keys and agents. If you want to perform installation, debugging or disaster recovery on your cluster, you must provide an SSH key to both your SSH agent and to the installation program. You can use this key to SSH into the master nodes as the user core. When you deploy the cluster, the key is added to the core users .ssh authorized key list. You must use a local key, not the one you configured with platform specific approaches such as AWS key pairs or OCI key pairs. You have to use your specific key which you create locally using SSH-keygen command. Interesting point about this installation is that we will be doing installation on AWS. I have the account, I have provisioned resources on AWS, I have a AWS paid account. Another thing is that I'll be managing the entire infrastructure of OpenShift from my local machine. That demonstration I will give you in this presentation. So first step is log into root as root user to your virtual machine, like the one which I have in Oracle VM VirtualBox. Open a terminal window and run this command to generate the key pair. SSH keygen, type is RSA-T, size is 4096, and no password. Start the SSH agent process as a background task. That's how you start your eval. SSH agent -s. Add your SSH private key to the SSH agent using SSH-add. So this is creating SSH private keys and the agent. Then obtain the installation program. So I'll just explain first and then I will demonstrate. Create an account on access.redhat.com and log into your account. You need 500 MB of local disk space to download the installation program. Access the infrastructure provider page on the Red Hat OpenShift Cluster Manager site at this URL, cloud.redhat.com/OpenShift/install. When you visit this URL, you will get this page, and this is what I'll show you. Navigate to the page for your installation type. In our case AWS. Select the recommended option like installer provision infrastructure. So here we have option download the installer and download the pull secret. You need to download both of them. Download the installation program, place the extracted file into root bin folder, because you need to directly call those files so that you can call it from anywhere. So make a directory root bin. If it is not there, go to the download folder, extract the file, move the file, that is OpenShift install, to root bin, so that you should be able to call this program. Look at the screenshot, cd download list, download it, extract the file, move the file to the bin folder, root bin folder here. Then from the same page, download the pull secret as a text file, and this is the pull secret file. If you see that it is a long secret key, a very lengthy key. Create the install config.yml file, .openshift install, create install config, -- directory is equal to OpenShift. This directory must not exist. And remember, don't remove this directory. Even if your installation is complete, everything is done, don't remove the directory, because as I told you, this directory will have your Terraform state files. What are Terraform state files? Terraform state files are the files which keep the track of resources you create using Terraform. Because this file, this program, OpenShift install program, is going to use Terraform. Let me assure you that. Let me confirm that. Absolutely no doubt in my mind. So therefore, if you remove this directory, you will get a tough time, man. You will get very tough time to remove the resources, because after study, after your practice, you would definitely want to delete those resources from AWS. And my experience is, I deleted that file. I tried all options. That's why I'm sharing that with confidence. So I tried that, and I deleted the directory, and it took me 4 or 5 hours to clean up the mess from AWS. And because it is heavy cost per hour you pay for the resources, and 6 machines will be created, so it end up like spending $200, $300 in just couple of hours. So don't take that risk. Don't delete that. However, using that Terraform destroy, or the command which will allow you to destroy the entire resources, it will just take 5-7 minutes to destroy all the resources. So you see yourself now, 5 minutes, 7 minutes, or the entire thing. Provisioning take around 50 minutes. That you will see in the demonstration. So you specify the directory, specify the empty directory name to store the files that the installation program will create. And I repeat, this installation program will create the TF state or Terraform state files. I have seen that. Select AWS as the platform target. These are the typical questions it will ask you. Platform, AWS, Azure, GCP, OpenStack, OVIRT, vSphere. You answer that, which I'll show you during the demonstration. So installer prompts. If you do not have the Amazon Web Service profile stored on your computer, enter the AWS access key and the secret access key for your user that you configured to run the installer program. Select the AWS region to deploy the cluster to. Select the base domain for Route 53 service that you configured for your cluster. I have this access key, and then secret, and then AWS my region, my domain which I have on AWS platform configured dwarkamar.in, which I used for the purpose of this training, and the cluster name. Then enter the descriptive name for your cluster. Paste the pull secret that you downloaded earlier. Modify the install config file. That is interesting, which you will see in my demonstration just after this slide. Install config file as per your needs, resource limits, and quota on AWS. The install config.yml file is consumed during the installation process. If you want to reuse the file, you must back it up now. After changes, my configuration look like this, and this is the configuration file. Now let's see the demonstration. Let's do the installation, and then we'll come back to this. Visit cloud.redhat.com/openshift/install. Now once you visit, if you already have an account, log in with that account. If not, you have to create an account and log in to Red Hat. Red Hat gives you 60 days of trial for trying this OpenShift, and I'm using developer preview, and you see various options here: run on laptop, VMware, power systems, or Azure, Microsoft, Google Cloud, AWS. We are going to use AWS. We have two options here, Linux and Mac. So we are going to deploy it on Linux virtual machine, using Linux virtual machine. So we are downloading the installer. Similarly, we also will be needing pull secrets. You can download pull secret, and for command line utilities OC and kubectl, you have to download the command line also. Now once you have downloaded, you can extract the files, and you can move the file to the executable path. Generally bin folder in your home directory is good for that. So we are going to extract the files and move these executables which are extracted from these files to /root/bin folder. We are working as root user in our local virtual machine. So extract the files, that is OpenShift client. So when you extract this command line, that is, you will get two files, kubectl OC. These are two important files. So copy these files to root bin folder. In my case they are already there, so I'm going to skip that. I'm just showing the command. Similarly, you try the other command also, kubectl. So in my case, as I said, already there, so I'm going to skip that. So after that, I'm going to unpack or extract a file from OpenShift-install-linux.tar.gz, and I'm going to place the file which is extracted. This file contains only one file, which is OpenShift-install, which is binary executable. So we are going to extract that file, and we are going to put that file also in the /root/bin folder. Now once the file is extracted, we are going to copy the file, and then we'll create a install config.yml file, and we are going to customize that. We are not going to install the default cluster. We are going to install customized cluster, because we don't need 3 worker nodes. We are going to select 2 worker nodes. So file is copied. Go to AWS, verify that you have account and you have required privileges, and you have created a user. I'm logging into my AWS account. In my AWS account, I will see under identity and access management IAM. I'll go to IAM and I'll select verify the users. I've created a special user for this purpose. The username is OpenShift. This is my user OpenShift, and I have given a full access to EC2 and IAM full access, and there are more options, more permissions like IP, elastic IP addresses. So I can show you the quota. There are resource limits. There's increased resources required, so you have to raise service requests. You can see on the left hand side, on the right hand side at the bottom, you see my multiple requests I raised for this provisioning of the resources. So these are my quotas. By default, you will not get the quota. You have to raise a service request. You have to send a request, and then they'll give you the elastic compute IP addresses, classic IP addresses, VPCs, security groups, because default quota is not sufficient. So now run that installer. What we are doing is we are creating, as I said, we are creating install config file using OpenShift install. Now before that, I also, if you see that, I also created a key pair. If you see on the top, SSH keygen -t RSA, I created a key pair. I added it to my SSH agent, which will basically be used by my installer script, and the public key of this will be placed into the nodes, so that I can connect to the nodes directly using SSH key based authentication. This is my AWS access key ID. It asked me that, and secret which I specified. I downloaded for these details from my AWS panel. Then cluster name, cluster 1, and then domain, I use root 53 to specify my domain, which was available free for myself for testing purpose, dwarkamart.in. I'm using that, and copy the pull secret. This has created install-config.yml file in OpenShift folder. Let's verify the file, and let's make some changes into the file. OpenShift/install-config.yml. Particularly, I'm going to specify the platform here, AWS, and the type is going to be t3a.large. which is a bare minimum requirement, minimum cost. I have tried, verified. This is the minimum size which incurs minimum cost per hour cost, T3A dot large shape, and I'm going to keep 2 replicas for worker because that is a bare minimum requirement, 2 replicas. By default it will create 3 replicas. Similarly, for master node, you have 3, bare minimum 3, but size, the type should be T3A.X large, because X large will have 4 virtual CPUs and 16 GB RAM, which is bare minimum requirement. And this is a size which has minimum cost. So I'm selecting the minimum cost resources per hour cost, and T3A.X large. This is the minimum. I have tried all possible combinations. This is the best possible combination which gives you minimum cost. After making changes, you are good to go. You are good to start the installer. So you can use now OpenShift -install. Make a copy of this file because that will be good for you, because this file is created under OpenShift folder, in OpenShift folder, and once you run that OpenShift -install, the file will be deleted after the provisioning. So better you keep a copy of the file if you require to provision multiple servers or multiple clusters using the same file. That makes sense. So in OpenShift install, create cluster -- directory OpenShift, log level is debug or info. You can specify log level, what log level you want. So once you press enter key, it will start provisioning. Remember, when I created that file install -config file, it asked me the AWS credentials, and it stored them into .aws folder in your root directory, in my home directory, under credentials files. So it is taking the details from that. It take around 37 minutes to provision that resource, and you'll get to the access URL, user ID with kubeadmin details, and the password with kubeadmin details. Copy them in the safe location so that you can access the URL, web console, and the user ID and password as kubeadmin. So copy it through this location in a notepad file. Now let's visit the URL which was given there and log in using kubeadmin and the password which was given to that. This password by default you will get under auth folder in OpenShift folder, which you used for provisioning the cluster. So specify the kubeadmin and you are good. Now what we should do is we should add some users. I already created a user file using stpasswd file, because STTP tool give you that command. I created the stpasswd file where all my users are there. So once I add it, I have 28 users provisioned using this, and this file has imported the users. Therefore now I can log out and try to demonstrate with using non-privileged user which I created using this command. So I use stpasswd option now to connect to OpenShift. So specify the user 28. For example, I created this user using swd passwd and copy the password. Once you are logged in, there are 2 perspectives. One is administrator, so a second is developer. So first thing first, you need to create a project. Remember, if you type this user ID, for example, user 28.project will not be accepted, dot is not allowed, so it will throw that error. So take a look at the error, what it shows, but let me fill the description first. And now click on create, you'll get that error message. So therefore remove the dot is not allowed in the name. Now create, and it will create the project. Project is logical grouping of all your applications. You can create multiple projects, you can have multiple groupings. Workload is basically for deployment. So go to developer perspective, click on add, and you will see container image. Let's provision let's deploy a simple application, right? And that is blog. So specify the name as blog, then name is blog, application name is blog, and just click on create, and you got to have a wonderful ready sample deployed very easily as a non-privileged user. So blog is deployed. So one application is deployed, one container is deployed, in the cluster. You click on this URL and you'll get the blog active. So fast, so quick, and we have done entire deployment. Now you want to see the nodes. You can click on the kubectl get nodes, will display all the nodes, that is 5 worker nodes which we have created. Okay, now installation is complete. Installation configuration parameters and the description. Let's look at those parameters. The base domain in the config file. The base domain for your cloud provider. This value is used to create routes to your OpenShift Container Platform cluster components. The DNS name for your cluster uses the metadata.name base domain format. The value is fully qualified domain name as for example example.com. In my case it was dwarkamart.in. Then control plane platform, the cloud provider to host. In our case it was AWS. Cloud platform, compute platform, the cloud provider to host the worker machines. This parameter value must match the control plane dot platform parameter value. In our case it was AWS. Metadata.name, name of your cluster. In my case it was cluster 1. Platform.platform region, the region to deploy your cluster into. In our case it was US East 1. And the pull secret, as the name suggests, pull secret. Deploy the cluster. You have seen that now. OpenShift install, create cluster, directory OpenShift, log level info. And this takes around 50 minutes, 52 minutes. So in this particular case, if you see here, 38 minutes. So 40 to 50 minutes depending on your computer. It will take around 40 minutes to complete. To view the different installation details, you can specify warning or debug or error instead of info here. Monitor your installation at AWS. You can monitor the resources on your EC2 dashboard as they are being provisioned. When the cluster deployment completes, directories for accessing your cluster, including a link to its web console and credentials for the kubeadmin user, displays on your terminal. You must not delete the installation program or the files that the installation program creates. Both are required to delete the cluster. This is the most important point. I've been warning, I've been telling you that don't delete this. And this is a screenshot of my AWS dashboard, where you see instances, running instances, dedicated host, all states, load balancers, security groups, volumes, all these are created, elastic IPs. Navigate to infrastructure provider page on the Red Hat OpenShift cluster manager site and select your infrastructure provider, in our case AWS. In the command line, this is for CLI, that is OC command, the OC command line interface. So visit the page, download the file from the same interface, select Linux platform from the drop down menu and download the command line tools. Unpack it, put it into the binary, that is bin folder, so that you can access it from anywhere. Verify that it is in your search path. After installation, you can simply run the command OC get nodes and you are done. So this is the example OC get nodes. If you see here, I created 3 master nodes and 2 worker nodes. So mandatory is 3 masters, worker node minimum 2, master minimum 3. That is prerequisite for AWS, because I tried all possible combinations to minimize the cost actually, because it's very costly affair. So to minimize the cost, I tried keeping 2 worker, 2 master. It did not allow. 3 masters, 2 worker, that is the minimum, bare minimum. Logging into the cluster, export the kubeadmin credentials file, export kubeadmin kubeconfig, root OpenShift auth kubeconfig, because this is the folder where you downloaded auth and kubeconfig file. You export it, then you run the command OC. This is the OC command line tool, and you'll see who am I. This will tell you that you are logged in as kubeadmin. That's all for this session. Thank you very much for watching. Bye bye.